Hi guys, I'm Shmee, and today you join me to go for a test drive in the McLaren 720S. Now this is actually the second time that I'm going to have driven one of McLaren's new Super Series. I headed down to Rome in Italy for the press launch, where I got an opportunity to have a first driving experience and also to shoot my very full in-depth video showing you all of the details and the facts and figures about the car. So if you want all the information about it, go check out that video. But today I want to focus mostly on the question that you've all been asking me recently, which is whether one of these will one day be a future Shmeemobile, whether it will be a car that I buy to have in the garage. Now, like I said, I want to take today to think a little bit more about it from that point of view, from that perspective of what it's going to be like to live with, to own, to use, to take on a road trip. And as such, this is one of the cars from McLaren's press fleet that I'm going to be driving today up here in Scotland. So let's have a quick little walk around, talk a little bit about it, some of the headline major bits of information that you might not already know if you're not familiar with the 720S. So it's the first time McLaren have replaced a model line, the new Super Series. I'm sure you're familiar with my current car, the 675 LT, which was the more track-focused version of the previous generation, the 650S that came before this. This car now has a 4-litre twin-turbocharged V8, mid-rear engine back there, rear-wheel drive. As the name suggests, 720 PS, which equates to 710 brake horsepower, and it also has 770 Newton meters of torque. Now the engine is actually mounted quite low down inside the back there, so there's not too much you can actually see, and part of that, as we'll see when we step in, is to have this very, very glass open canopy around the driver and passenger, which is really quite awesome. Now performance figures are truly nuts. 0 to 62 miles per hour takes just 2.9 seconds. That matches the LT, even in the regular, normal, comfortable version of the car. 0 to 124 miles per hour is actually faster at 7.8 instead of the 7.9 seconds of the LT Coupe. And the top speed is well over 200 miles an hour, 212 miles per hour. But let's just actually come round here, and the new style McLaren Key here. Pop open the door. This is one of my favourite things. When you actually open up the door, the way it lifts that roof section as well, very reminiscent of the old F1. And it's all part of having this mono cage where you've got carbon fibre coming over the top of the car as well as the lower part of the tub, which means it's only actually 40 kilos heavier than the track version of the previous generation, which bodes for a very light track version of this in the future. But McLaren did everything they could to pull all the surfaces away, so it's very open and airy in here. And in fact, if I pull the camera completely in, you can see into the rear, where it's very unusual to have this kind of visibility backwards in a supercar. Because of the way it's done with that cage, means you have very small C and D pillars with glass between them. You have this additional storage space back here, so you've got over 200 litres of luggage space back here on top of the front bonnet, which for a car like this is just, well, incredible for luggage capacity, and you could go grand touring and not stress about anything. If we step in, I always do so by holding the door while I step in, pull that down, you get this feeling of airiness, given that you've got those open panels on the roof. It's just incredible. And then, if we start it up here, into life, you've got this digital display that has all these fun features, like the fact that you can fold it with this button. If you press that button, you then get the track mode, where you just have that information on the smaller digital display that doesn't obstruct your view out of the front. That's just cool. Put it back to normal. You've got features like the 360 cameras. If you put it into reverse, full 360 degree cameras. I've never seen that on another supercar. It's just loaded with equipment and luxury, and this is the Lux spec, so it's about £250,000. The Lux spec has all the leather finish, the performance spec would have Alcantara finish, and it would actually have carbon fibre panels up here instead of the glass. But I think the glass is part of the cool aspect of this car, being able to see and feel you have light in the cabin. But these displays, they're just phenomenal, the amount of information you've got. It's all, you know, refined and developed upon what I already know from the previous generation. But let's get started. Let's head on out and experience the car on the roads and what it's like here in the United Kingdom. The immediate observation in here is how usable the car is, and that's what I felt the first time. It's not intimidating. You jump in, the ride is comfortable, it's easy to drive, you're not stressed, you're not thinking in the way that you normally think when you drive a car that is quite as capable as this thing is. It's airy, like I said, it's open, you've got great visibility everywhere you look, you can position the car nicely, the steering doesn't feel too heavy, it doesn't have any of those impracticalities that come with driving a supercar, which, when you sort of take a step back and think about it as an outright car, it is completely class leading, because nothing has the power at one end that this has, yet the compliance at the other end that this also does. And that's what's so hard, I think, to portray and explain. But just driving along like this, obviously we're in 7th gear, just cruising, full comfort. I say full comfort, it actually turns on in sport mode. So in here you have the ability to soften it or firmen it, depending which way you want it. So driving along as normal, it will actually start in sport mode rather than track at one extreme or comfort at the other. But as we drive along, we'll try and find a nice little road, because sport mode is great, but I also want it manual so that we can shift using the smaller rocker paddles on the back, so you can have the extended large ones. But that's where it lacks the noise front. There's no drama. Does that sound like second gear? Does that sound like second gear at 5,000 RPM? And it's the hard thing to really come to terms with, is how a car can be so good but lacks slightly a little bit of emotion. Oh, nice crack though, nice crack, very LT-esque. This car's been driven well. It's got 1,100 miles on the clock, so it's had a couple of outings. But it doesn't grab the heartstrings, and we've heard that said before. We've heard it being talked about as the car that is so amazing but doesn't make you scream, I want one of those. And that's because it does so many things in a very futuristic way, lacks some of the excitement of previous generation cars. You know, naturally aspirated engines, fine. They sounded amazing. We're not going to have many of them going forward. Well, maybe in the future we'll have more NA engines with electrical assistance, but this is all the engine. It has a very, very linear power delivery. The way you put your foot down, and it's just started drizzling on me, so we'll be a bit gentle with it. But the power delivery, the amount of torque, just means it gets going brilliantly at any speed in any conditions. You don't have to stress about it. But I think I'm going too much down the review route. I want to think about this more as my personal view on it. And I love the tech. So things like being able to just fold the screen at a press of a button. I love that you can do that. It is so cool. I don't know real world whether you would really do it, but I love that you can do it, to have a little bit more viz forwards. Then the whole integration here and the way you've got all the active dynamics panels set up is really, really nice. And I really like what McLaren do. As you know, I've had 4 of their cars for a reason. I'm a big, big fan of the company. Not for any reason other than I like the way they're doing it, I like the way the cars are engineered, I like how they look. And although there are some controversial design touches on this car, I actually think it looks really good. I think when you get up close to it and you get used to it and are more familiar with it, and the opening headlights, for example, don't scream out as such a new dramatic design, they actually flow really quite nicely. And I mean, for driving like this, I'm getting pretty gentle because of the weather, but you can get a feel that there is some playfulness there. A lot of the turbo feel, when you lift off you hear some of the wastegate noise. I can't really get up any decent pace now that the weather has gone against me, but the turn-in is great, not quite the same as the LT. The front end of the LT is superb, but the power delivery is very consistent. The suspension and ride is wonderful. It doesn't have the noises and rattles that the LT has. Now don't get me wrong, I have no intention of selling my LT. If I buy a 720S, it is in addition to the LT, not instead of it. And I'd like to drive them back to back actually, to get a really, really good feel for what the 2 cars are like. And when I say in addition, maybe the LT stays in the UK and I get a 720S at my place in Germany, something like that. Who really knows? That's the future's going to determine the way that goes. So I think I really like it as a car. I like it as a car that I could jump in, and it's really cool. It will be fun on track days, amazing on mountain roads, really good for long distance driving. But the reality is that means if I buy one, I'm going to do something like 10,000 miles a year or more. in a car like this. And I'm just going to swing around actually to drive that road again. And that kind of mileage in this kind of car is suicidal for the value of it. Now, don't get me wrong, I'd love to be driving cars and not worrying about that kind of thing, but at the end of the day, we live in the real world and money doesn't grow on trees. So if I buy a car and do a lot of miles and it costs me £50,000 in depreciation, I've got to think about that, because that's really nice the way it pulls away, because it's relevant. So I feel like what I want to do is find one in due course that's got some miles on it, it's already been used, it's had niggles picked up on, because a car this complex, first of a new model from any manufacturer, even if it's a mainstream manufacturer, always has little things that gets found. You might have seen some of that on this, but I would like to find a car that's had all of those sorted, all those dealt with, and is ready basically to go out and be driven and used properly, because the problem I have is if I buy one now, I'm going to do a lot of miles very quickly. Honestly, I'm going to do a lot of miles very quickly, because it's that kind of car. Completely drive it to the shop, so you can probably put a huge amount of luggage back here and take stuff without worrying it across continents. I could imagine using it almost in the way I use the FF now. Obviously it's only got 2 seats instead of 4. It does turn well down those twisties, and kind of it actually treads on the AMG GTR that I have coming in a couple of weeks time. It's that kind of thing. But let me just for a second gear, foot down, really fast, really fast. And it's an interesting thing actually. Red line is 8,200, but first and second you only get it up to 8,100, so the torque is limited. Otherwise it will get a little bit mental and shifting gear doesn't work properly. I just wish I could actually floor it or give you the sensation of driving it hard, because this weather does not really allow. It is fun though, actually. It just doesn't have the sound, it needs an exhaust. I would have to do a Paul Wallace and have an exhaust on it. A little bit of slip there. It's really quick, and the videos you've probably already seen of drag races and things pretty much comprehensively explain how quick this car is. But from my perspective, it's ultimately more a GT than a supercar, I feel. For a supercar, it's like if you drive a Bentley Continental Super Sports or GT3R, they feel like a GT car that's trying to be a supercar. This is a supercar trying to be a GT car, and it replaces what's normally the front-engined, the way you might go for an 812 or an F12 or an AMG GTR, or ignoring price points here, those kind of class of cars. It's more one of those than it is a 675 LT to me. So my conclusion here is, and driving it again, I'll take it out again for another little run, probably when the cameras are rolling, is that it's a phenomenal car, it's very usable, I would like one, but when the time is right for one, and I'm going to be able to use it without worrying about it now, would be pointless going into winter. This is season to drive the Focus RS as we come towards the end of the year, and I'll be driving my AMG GTR because I'm foolish, and I just want to drive that car a lot. While it's brand new, I've been waiting for it for a year and a half, so I'll keep my eyes peeled. Maybe there'll be a surprise Shmee-mobile at some point. I'm not going to jump into it right now because it hasn't made me sort of whelp with excitement in the way the Ford GT did or the 675 LT did, to be completely honest. And I think that's the main thing, but I do think it's a brilliant car, and I do look forward to some miles in the future in one, and I'll be keeping my eyes on the market and seeing what happens. So that's pretty much it for now, I think. My head is spinning with ideas and trying to decide myself. We'll see. These things can often be rather spontaneous. I think it needs to be in quite a bold colour. I'd want it in a bold colour because of all the carbon parts to give a nice contrast. But time will tell. Time will tell. That's where I'm going to leave this for now. Actually, I'm just going to open up some space in front of me and have one little opportunity on a slightly drier piece of tarmac to put my foot down and experience what it does. Yeah, it's quick, guys. Amazing. The torque. Hey, anyways, I'll wrap this one up there. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Make sure you stay tuned and subscribe to follow this adventure and see whether one of these falls into place at some point in the future. Time will tell. Anyway, wrap that one up for now. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers.